Hello, and thank you for listening to the Everyday Victory podcast for modern Christian women of color. You can find us on our website at www.mcwwisdom.com. Black women and Christian marriage. I want to warn you. Here is your trigger warning. I am going to challenge your assumptions and your fantasies about marriage as a Christian woman. There has been a lot, and I've spoken about it before. There is a lot on YouTube about kingdom marriage. And there are a lot of young Black women posting messages and saying their prophetic messages about women getting married. You get a husband, you get a husband, you get a husband. That seems to be what's happening on YouTube. And so some people have been compelled to even post video messages saying, listen, this is getting out of control. These messages get so many likes, they get so many views, which means the creators are getting paid some money for these videos. So just remember that. But it's like they are making an idol out of marriage. And the Christian church has idolized marriage anyway. I am not a part of church culture, but there is a part of church culture that puts marriage on a pedestal, making women feel that the ultimate goal for them is to snag a husband and be married. Pure women, good Christian women, have husbands and get married. So if you are a virgin or if you are celibate, then you can get married. You just have to wait on the Lord to send your one, and then you will be in ministry and you'll be happy and all will be well with you when you get married. Church activities are geared towards family and married couples, right? So if you are single in a church, you feel pressed to get married and feel like something is wrong with you because it feels you are unchosen. So in a lot of instances, singleness means unchosen. But if you are a proper woman, if you are a proper Christian woman, then certainly you can get chosen, and then you will be blessed by God. So this really is the attitude of a lot of people, to the point of craziness. I mean, it seems crazy to me that such pressure is put on being married. And at one time, when I was in my 20s and early 30s, I did feel that pressure because there's also a societal pressure for women to get married, especially by 30 or before 30, to have the husband, to have children. But let me tell you this. I worked in radio with an older white lady on the news station. And she was very honest with me. She chain smoked, so I had to listen to her through puffs of smoke, which I'm allergic to. But she said to me that she once had a very promising career in journalism and in radio journalism. But she was approaching 30 and she got married. She felt the pressure to get married. And she had a couple of children, a son and a daughter. And she said that if she could have sent one of them back, she would have. I believe it was the daughter. And she said, I got married and had kids and put my career on hold, but I can't see where my life was the better for it. She could not see how her life was better having gotten married and had children and given into that societal pressure. So I'm not talking down on marriage, but I want you to see a more realistic perspective of marriage. If you are one of these women who are buying into the you get a husband sort of rush that's happening on social media and talking about kingdom marriage as if it's different from a regular marriage. There's this language of kingdom marriage, and I have commented on several people's posts. It's a regular marriage. Yes, marriage is supposed to have purpose, not just because you want to have sex. And so you're getting married so that you won't go to hell, because fornication is a sin for you and you don't want to go to hell, because Paul says it's better to marry than to burn. So you take all that very seriously and you want to have sex or you get married. Marriage is more than that. So I understand that people put kingdom marriage on the term to try to get people to understand that it really is about serving God, serving your spouse, and putting God at the center of it so that both of you have something to fulfill in the kingdom of God. So I understand kingdom marriage from that perspective, but it is important, especially for younger women in your 20s and 30s now, to have a proper perspective of marriage as a Christian woman. Why am I specifically talking to Black Christian women right now? Because for ages, we have been told we could not get married. One, we have been prevented from getting married. Black women as slaves were considered chattel, considered property, considered dirty, and were not considered to be human women who could get married and have a husband. You could breed, you got raped, you got molested, but you were not to be a wife. Black women could be concubines, but not a wife, because becoming a wife was for proper women, and Black women were not considered proper women. And so getting married for Black women is a big deal. Black women were legally prevented from getting married, especially to members of the opposite race or of another race. You remember the loving couple, and they had to legally challenge marital laws that said Black and whites could not get married. So there's a different sort of pressure when it comes to Black women in marriage, because all of those attitudes still carry on to this day. So 70% of Black households are headed by single Black women. That means there are a lot of Black women who have never been married. Statistics say 50% of all Black women have never been married, but 70% are heading single parent households. Do you understand that? So there is a different challenge for Black women to even believe that we can get married. There was an article where a Black woman wrote very candidly of her experience. She had to go to therapy just to believe that marriage was for her, that she could fulfill her desire to get married. And she did eventually get married. So for Black women, we have a lot to work through when it comes to marriage. It's not as simple as saying, God, I want to get married, and then boom, you're married. There was a lot of internal heartbreak, heartache, pain, and humiliation that Black women have to work through in order for us to get to the point where we say, okay, God, I desire to get married and I really want to become a wife. So that's the preface for this message. Again, trigger warning. The truth is, God is not punishing you with singleness. Wives have to be developed and cultivated, and that sort of development takes time. If you have been single for a long time, if you have been praying to become a wife and to have your own husband, and years have passed and you are still trying to hold on to that desire, it's because you have to be developed mentally, spiritually, and physically to become a wife. And depending on your personality and how you think about yourself in marriage, that will determine the length of time you stay single. Some of us take a long time to get it. Some of us are slow learners, and others of us are A+ students. So think of it that way. You will meet your one in God's timing. You need to maximize your singleness to the point where you cannot enter the next phase of your life alone. When your next move in God requires partnership, Your desire for marriage will escalate and your opportunities will escalate. It feels like you start preparing for marriage unconsciously when you are getting close to that time. Here's what I mean by maximizing your singleness. I have written to date 23 books and developed about 24 online classes, businesses, ministry website. I could not have gotten all of this done if I had been in a marriage track relationship or if I had been married, because I would have had to pay more attention to the marriage than to all of this that God has given for me to do. So sometimes you are single so that you can get a lot of your purpose done. The heavy part of it, the part of it that requires you to be alone, to research, to write, to record, as in my case, so that when you are released into a relationship, you can focus on that relationship and not keep thinking about, oh, but God wanted me to do that. Oh, but I needed to write this book. Oh, but I need to finish this. I need to finish that. Because feeling unfinished or feeling like you have jumped ahead of God is a heaviness and a burden that affects every part of your life. So even if you meet the man of your dreams, if you are coming into a relationship with that burden, you are going to mess it up. Remember, marriage is a faith move that requires courage and spiritual preparation. And I did a message on making faith moves that you really want to listen to, but marriage takes faith. It takes courage. It is not easy. There was a young lady who was very candid about her experience getting marriage, getting her kingdom marriage. She's in her 20s, and she was one of the ones who were talking about kingdom marriage. Now, this is a situation that she described, okay? She described how she met her young husband, who already has 3 children by another young lady. These children are all under the age of 6 years old. They are babies. He was not particularly employed when they met, but he had a dream and he has business dreams. So they got together. She did not have a wedding, not an official traditional wedding, and they called themselves married, although a lot of people were questioning her marital status just because of the way that she described how they got married. I assume they had some sort of civil ceremony where they got a license. However it comes about, they are married and struggling. She recently posted a video saying that the pressures of life and marriage have gotten to her so badly that she had to seek therapy and they prescribed medication for her. The spiritual warfare surrounding marriage and being a wife is so heavy that she didn't expect it, and she felt like she was losing it, so she had to seek professional help, and that is perfectly fine, perfectly fine. But when we say there is a preparation for marriage, in your mind, you have to understand that it is not all roses and champagne. It is not all romance and I'll never be lonely again. When we're talking about Christian marriages, there is a very real enemy who will launch all sorts of attacks to try to destroy your marriage. So you have to be mentally, physically, and spiritually prepared for the assignment of marriage. Marriage is purposeful. Do you know the purpose you will fulfill as a wife? Or do you know how you will assist your husband in fulfilling his purpose? Take the example of Michelle Obama. She has written books and made documentaries about her experience with Barack Obama. But her career path as a lawyer and her attraction for Barack Obama led her to be the wife of the first ever Black president of the United States, which made her FLOTUS, the first Black first lady of the United States. Can you handle that? If that is the mission of your marriage, If that is one of the purposes of your marriage, can you handle that? Do you have the personality characteristics, the education, the skills to be able to handle the purpose of your marriage? What are you bringing to the table? So many people say that. What are you bringing to the marriage? What kind of helpmate are you right now? We are supposed to be helpmates to the husband. Helpmeets is what it says in Genesis about Eve. But helpmate, what kind of helper are you? What kind of helper are you right now? Do you have what it takes to support a millionaire or a billionaire in his business and in his purpose in life? Or can you support a deacon at the church who works as a school resource officer? Both are fine. But get really realistic about who you are and what you can handle. Be honest and understand your purpose as a wife. Understand the kind of marriage that you will enter into. And that comes by prayer and from revelation from God. You just can't figure out what kind of marriage you're best suited for until you have spent time with your Creator. So instead of praying and in some cases begging God for a husband, why not ask Him to first develop you into the kind of wife who can mold and handle the husband He wants you to partner with? Presenting a husband wish list to God, in my opinion, is almost disrespectful. And I've done it before. I've done it before, as many women have, because God knows you better than you know yourself. But He will honor your list. Let me say this. If I had gotten married, been allowed to get married in my 20s when I was huffing and puffing and crying and whining about getting married, I would have suffered greatly. I would not have been able to handle marriage at that point. I would have been getting therapy and probably trying to take some medication if I had been allowed to get married in my 20s. So God knows what is best for you. Now, this is a rated PG-13 moment. I want to warn you in advance. But this is how modern Christian women talk, okay? So you're about to hear some adult language. I was talking to a woman in her 40s who has been married for 3 years. This is her first ever marriage. Her husband was married 3 times before, so she is his third marriage, which is fine. But she was talking to me about what she wanted in a husband. She had had several men to prophesy to her that they were her husband, and it didn't work out. So she finally said that she wanted a man who could fix things. She was not bent out of shape on how much money he would make. She just wanted him to be a good person, a good provider. And she said she wanted a man who could perform oral sex. And she said, and when I tell you, I got what I wanted and more, because sometimes that man, oh my goodness, I tell you, sometimes I tapped out. Okay. Woman of God. She has pastored 2 Methodist churches. She is currently assisting in ministry, her husband in ministry. She put that on her list. And when she said it, I was like, oh, I didn't know we could put that on the list. Let me do that. Yes, modern Christian women talking about marriage. I can put that on the list. And I didn't realize I could. So when we tell each other our stories, then we are inspired and we gain insight, especially when it comes to love and relationships, dating, and marriage. Stop settling for being a baby mama. Sure enough, there are plenty of women who have had children in their younger years, and that does not discount you at all from becoming a wife. And there is no shame to that. Everybody has a different story and a different journey. And for some of you all, being a single parent has been a part of your journey and your testimony, and there is no shame in that. However, when you have a choice, choose better. Recently, Tyler Perry put up a picture on Instagram and on social media of himself after he worked out, saying that basically it was a thirst trap picture. He said this is what a midlife crisis looks like at 51 years old. He announced that he is single, meaning he is no longer in the 10-year dating relationship he was in with his baby's mama. So he is hot, he is single, he is in his midlife crisis and ready to mingle. He is a billionaire. My question is, why would a woman spend 10 years, air quote, dating a man without ever getting married? She's a smart woman. She's got education. She has social breeding, but she is a baby mama. Why is that? Why spend 10 years with a man and never getting married? Now, because he is a billionaire, maybe he didn't want to enter the legal contract of marriage where he could stand to lose up to half his fortune if the marriage didn't work out and if it ended in divorce. And there are a lot of wealthy people. Oprah is one. There are a lot of wealthy people who do not want to get married for that reason, because they want control of their money, and that's fine. But she has a 6-year-old son with this billionaire who says that he is single now, after all of the years she spent with him. You know that has got to be hurtful, that the man you have your only child with never married you and is now putting pictures up on Instagram saying he's single and in a crisis and ready for the next chapter of his life. Tyler Perry is a Christian man. He's been all over TBN, all over at Joel Osteen's church. He has made the circuit. T.D. Jakes' church. He has made the Christian evangelical circuit, telling his story and talking about the goodness of God. So he is a Christian man. But he never proposed marriage to his 10-year girlfriend, and now they have broken up, and now they are quoted as saying they are trying to be the best co-parents they can be. That is hurtful to women. I don't care how strong you are. I don't care how much you say you didn't need to be married. You were happy with his girlfriend handouts. I don't care how much you say that. That has got to hurt just a little bit at some point in your experience. So now, she has never been his wife. He is not obligated to continue to give her money or access to any of his lavish lifestyle because she is not a wife and never was. He can pay her child support. He's obligated to pay for the upkeep of his child and care of this child, but not for her. So remember, wives have legal rights. Even in this day and age, married women are respected more in the legal system and in the court system than single women. That old dated attitude still applies today. So there are some real reasons why women should push for marriage. So regardless of what culture and non-Christians are doing, or even in Tyler Perry's case, regardless of what Christians are doing, you can expect better for yourself. There are rights and privileges of being a wife that you can have and that you should have if that is your desire. So instead of succumbing to these loose, casual relationships where you are referred to as a baby mama, you can demand more of yourself and demand more of the men you are dating. A child should have a stable nuclear family, however that looks. Not weekend daddies and every other holiday custody visits. Why would you settle for this kind of inferior relationship? I'm just asking you. And why birth a child or multiple children into this unstable environment? I know I sound old-fashioned because all the world is just spitting out babies without creating families. But as a Christian woman, you should want the support and the comfort of having a family unit where you are a wife and you have a husband. Truly, the purpose of Christian marriage, which is about establishing protective units of worshipers who praise, honor, and testify of the goodness of God, has truly been lost. And I'll even say that a lot of Black women, especially young Black women, don't even think of marriage in that way. They don't think of marriage at all because it's not presented to them as an option. All in culture, they see the baby mama. They see the single girl with the baby hanging on her hip. They see the arguments with the baby daddy. But they do not see a whole lot of images of real marriages that are doing the best that they can to live according to the ways of God and to raise their children to do the same, to follow God and to honor God. We belong to God, and we are supposed to strengthen ourselves against a world that is blind to the truth of Jesus being the way, the truth, and the life, and against our adversary, the devil, who seeks to deceive and destroy as many souls as possible. Christian marriage should be a safe haven and a respite from the opposition against God and against us as believers. Christian parents should love, protect, and train their children to love God and to serve God to the best of their abilities. Now, what do you think marriage is about? What do you think a Christian marriage should look like? Before you continue to pray to get married and petition God for a husband, you really need to get clear about these things. The whole kingdom marriage debacle, I'm calling it a debacle because it is hurting so many people and confusing so many people. It's an attempt to guide this generation back to those tenets of Christian marriage by focusing on spouses as being ministry partners who help each other grow in their divine purpose. However, this kind of relationship is not a prize for being celibate or for being a good girl. Like Oprah, giving away cars. You get a husband, you get a husband, you get a husband. No, that is not the point of celibacy. Trust me. The prize for celibacy is not getting a husband. Your first charge is to grow in your relationship with God so closely that He becomes enough for you. Not that you negate your desire to have a husband, because that comes from God. Your willingness to be a wife comes from God, and that desire comes from the Lord. But focusing on getting a husband suggests that God is not enough for you, or that you think marriage will fulfill you in ways that you cannot experience as a single woman. And sometimes that is true. But sometimes, if you are really honest with yourself, if you are really pressed about getting married, you feel unfulfilled somehow. Somehow you feel you're not getting from God what it is you truly need to get from God. And that is a bad way to start a marriage. There is a woman who is in her 40s that I listen to. She has a ministry, and she was very open about her being a widow. She's been a widow for 7 years, but she said that her ideas about marriage were not perfect when she got married, not at all. They weren't perfect at all, but God gave her grace, and God still ordained the marriage and allowed them to have a good marriage for the time that her husband was alive. But she said she thought marriage would save her from promiscuity, would save her from her high sexual desires. She had already had 2 sons when she met her husband, born and raised in the church. Her family are all ministers and pastors. She herself is an ordained minister, but this was still part of her journey and part of the choice that she made. And that was part of her thinking about marriage, is that being a wife would make her respectable. It would save her from sin. And if you're honest, a lot of you think of marriage in that way. But God wants you to be healed and fulfilled before you enter marriage so that you don't put that weight on your husband. Help him out before he gets to you. So instead of trying to find a mate, and we've all done it, we've all read the books, we've all tried the world's way of dating and finding a man, take a break on all of that and submit to God. Submit your desires for marriage, submit your current ideas about marriage to God, and get with God to see what He reveals to you about your position as a wife, how marriage is supposed to look in your life, and how you are supposed to operate in the ministry of marriage. Why do I say this? Because a lot of women jump into marriage before they know what it's all about. They jump into marriage before they're truly ready. How is that? Because you still have free will. If you want something bad enough, you'll find a way to get it. If you want to do something bad enough, you will find a way to do it. And a lot of the times we circumvent God's will or we ignore it because we want to do what we want to do. And He'll allow it. And you will endure the consequences. And He will restore you and recover you. But instead of being in that position, you want to go into it as a whole person with a good understanding of what marriage is all about. Submit to the process of becoming a wife. And I don't mean for that to be weird, because there are a lot of churches and a lot of pastors who are doing unfortunate things to women, saying unfortunate things to women with this premise that this is what you do in order to become a wife. That is not what I'm saying. Black women are powerful, so we cannot be so casual with who we date and who we marry. So it might take a little bit longer for you. Our partnerships can bring us great joy or great pain, especially if you choose the wrong person. Great pain if you choose the wrong person. How is that possible if I'm praying and submitting to God and I'm expecting God to bring the right one for me? Again, we can still be clouded by our own desires. Going back to the lady who was the pastor, and she's married to a pastor now, she's in ministry. She also told me that she had a vision, an idea of who she would marry. She wanted basically to be part of a power couple. She wanted a man with money, wanted him to be tall, to be attractive, and she dated men like that. They gave her gifts and all sorts of things, she said. She lived that life, and she dated those men, but none of them worked out. When she finally submitted to God, and when she submitted to the will of God, she opened her mind and her heart to the man that is best for her. That took a while. That took some doing. Because she said when she met her husband, she wasn't thinking about him in that way. She wasn't necessarily attracted to him in that way. It took some conversations with God for her to truly open herself up to him being her husband. But evidently they have the best sex life and they are having a good time being married. But she said after 3 years of marriage, she finally feels like they're on the same page. So marriage comes with some work. 3 years in, she's just now feeling that they are on the same page and that they are moving forward with what God wants them to do. That is very powerful. It just doesn't happen overnight. Good marriages are not intuitive. You don't just believe in God, marry a Christian, and have a good marriage. It takes some work. It takes some sacrifice. And she was very open with me about that. But she is enjoying it. And that's the key. Yes, it might take work, but at the end of the day, she enjoys her husband, he enjoys her, and they enjoy their lives together. When you do God's business, when you do what God has given you to do as a single woman, the man will show up. You might have options. Several men might show up. Like in the example of the female pastor that I just said, she told me that several men told her, I feel like you are my wife. but she had to hold on and have faith and get really close to God in order for her to make the right choice for her. Every woman's story is different. There might be some similarities, but your story will not exactly match another woman's story on how she comes to meet her man and get married. So there is no formula. Even if people have webinars talking about their marriage experience and charging you $15 for it, their situation is not your situation. Their experience is not your experience. So as a single woman, you want to be busy, working in your career, doing what God wants you to do, and preparing yourself for receiving the ministry of marriage when it comes for you. Let's look at the Bible. In Genesis chapter 29, Rachel was watering camels when Jacob discovered her. In Genesis 24, with Rebekah and Isaac, she was watering sheep. I might have them confused. One was watering camels and one was watering sheep. The point is, when the emissary came to Rebekah and said, listen, I have a man for you, Isaac. When Jacob saw Rachel watering animals and he ran up and kissed her, she was about her father's business because those were her father's sheep. She was a shepherdess. And again, I might be getting Rachel and Rebecca confused, but the point is they were working. They were doing purpose work. They were doing what they were supposed to be doing at that time as unmarried women. And then the opportunity came. Their stories are different. Your story may not be like their story or anybody else's story. It might be similar, but there are some general ideas that we can take away from those experiences, which is be about your father's business. Do what you are supposed to be doing. Do not become obsessed with being married. Get really close to God before you start praying to have your own husband, because marriage is no joke. So as with any other opportunity, if you think about your job, your career, the preparations you have had to make, perhaps you had to get some education or some specialized training. You have a resume. You have power suits for when you go on interviews. You have preparations in your career that you have made. Think about preparations for marriage. There is a story of Esther in the Bible and the preparations she made to enter into the king's court that a lot of people relay to single women about getting ready for marriage. And there are some spiritual and mental preparations that you need to make as well. Marriage is not just about romance and having someone to Netflix and chill with. Marriage comes with burdens, responsibilities, and spiritual warfare that you might not be properly equipped for right now, which is why you are still single. 2020 has revealed to us the true state of the world and the state of the Christian church. And it's raw. It is ridiculous. It is violent. So as believers and soldiers of God, we don't have time to buckle under the pressures of being married. You have to go ahead and be ready, not get ready once you get married. Oh, I'll get ready to be a wife when I actually get married. You're going to be in a world of hurt if you try to figure out how to be a wife after you get married. But a lot of women are. And a lot of women are experiencing difficulties only because they didn't have a proper idea of marriage before they got married. And that's okay. They'll work through it. God will get them through it. Their husbands will get through it with them, hopefully. But that's sort of a trauma that you might not have to experience if you really think about yourself and marriage before you actually get married. We need to be victorious single women who are ready, willing, and able to cover a man and children in prayer and successfully war in the spirit against enemy forces that love to tear apart Christian marriages. Are you ready? Or do you still need a little bit more time? Are you ever truly going to be ready? My mother told me, you're never really ready to get married and you're never really ready to have a baby. They just sort of pop up. You can prepare all you want to, but in the end, they just sort of pop up. Remember, once you say I do, you're all the way in it, and you can't easily break the covenant of marriage when it gets hard for you, or when the reality of marriage finally hits you and proves to be quite different than what you originally thought it would be. So prepare yourself as best as possible. How is that? Read the Bible. Look at women of the Bible who are married. Listen to other women's stories. Read books. Pray wisely. And choose wisely, because marriage is serious business. And it is a bond that is not easily broken spiritually or legally. Divorces are not easy to come by. In most states, you have to wait 6 months to 1 year after you file for divorce before you get a court date. Think about that. And if one spouse challenges the divorce, you're going to have to get another court date, and that could take another year or two. So marriage is not easily broken. God does not easily just break that covenant. Oh, you don't want to be married anymore? It's hard. Okay, you're done. So be very careful and very mindful when you are thinking about marriage, when you are praying for marriage, and when you are preparing yourself for marriage. There are highs and there are lows. Doing life is not easy, and adding somebody else into your life, or other people if there are children involved, is not easy. Are you up for the task? Are you up for that challenge? And you'll know it when God releases you to pursue marriage and to become a wife. You'll know it. You can never be fully ready for anything in this life. You can never be fully prepared. That's what my mother was telling me. You can never be fully prepared for anything in this life, because there are always going to be some surprises. That is just the nature of life. But do the best that you can by getting a proper, more balanced perspective about yourself as a wife, your husband, what you expect a husband to do, and what you expect God to do in your marriage. Okay, this might have been a difficult message, but hopefully it has been helpful to some of you. Remember to head to our website at www.mcwwisdom.com. There are so many books on the website to help you in your spiritual journey so that you can get to this point where you can add somebody else into your life, where you can be a wife, where you can maximize your singleness in doing so much that God wants you to do until He is ready for you to enter the next phase of your life, which requires a partner and which requires a marriage partner. May the Lord bless you and keep you. May the Lord show you His kindness and have mercy on you. May the Lord watch over you and give you peace. Amen.